Greetings, everyone, and welcome to today's TOC podcast. I'm Joe Weichert, co-chair of O'Reilly's Tools of Change conference, and it's hard to believe, but TOC New York is just around the corner. Registration is currently open, and I recommend you check out the All Access Pass, which is something new for 2012. You can learn more about that, as well as everything else related to TOC at our website, toccon.com. So I have a special guest for today's podcast. I managed to get my O'Reilly colleague, Alan Noren, to spend some time with us. Alan is the head of O'Reilly's online and marketing groups. Alan, welcome to this TOC podcast.
Thanks, Joe.
So, Alan, I've spent the last year or so bragging to anyone who will listen to me about how O'Reilly is having so much success with direct ebook sales. What do you believe the reasons are for that success?
Well, I think there are a couple things, including our brand, the products that we offer, our audience, we have, it was relatively easy for us to get into the ebook market because, so many of our customers are, technical people, and it wasn't such a leap for them. I think, too, it has very much to do with the way that developers work. They work online. So it wasn't as foreign as it was for a lot of people I know in the trade space. But it's also that we've been online for so long. We put up our first website in the early 90s. And so we have a long and established, internet presence that has really made that, much easier for us. And then lastly, it's the ecosystem we've built up. So it wasn't that we just went live one day with, the ability to buy from us. We'd been selling, print books online for a long time. We had a relationship with a lot of customers, whether they bought from us or not. We had things like our example files and such, that they would come to us. And we were really seen, I think, as the de facto place to find out about our books, but also because of the news component of what we do online, so we had a whole ecosystem of rich content that people relied on.
So let's talk for a minute about the rest of the publishing world out there. I mean, it seems like everybody else obviously has all the catalog pages for their books up and so forth, and you can buy direct if you want to, but they're generally not making a big deal of it and therefore not having a lot of success. What do you think's holding them back?
Well, I think it's probably largely two things. The first being that there's still really a stranglehold of retail. That publishers have lived for so long, they were the producers and they relied on other people to sell their products. So I know from talking with other publishers that they still ask me, well, if you do a special deal, do you still hear from, your retail partners? So that's one thing. But it's also, it's a matter of, skill and competency, of selling online. It's not just a matter of putting your stuff out there and making catalog pages. It's a whole host of things that, a publisher needs to be aware of. Otherwise, why should somebody take notice, especially if you can just, get the same thing from Amazon or from somewhere else? So, that we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money in developing, O'Reilly.com to be not just a set of catalog pages. And that skill and competency, all we have to do is look at what any retailer does, whether they be online or brick and mortar, and see the kinds of things that they're doing continually to attract new customers and, product offerings, the way that they present those products.
So how about a topic you and I have sparred over a number of times, and that is discounting, and particularly deep discounting. What role do you feel that deep discounting in particular plays in online success?
Oh man, it's that's a great question, and we can get into dangerous ground here, really, really quickly, because I wish that we lived in a world of no discounting, and that we just that people paid what we feel is a fair price for the products we have. But, we live in, a Walmart world. We live in a world where Amazon is, all about, getting it at the cheapest price. We live in a world where some of the most valued companies are not about creating great products, but about, getting them to you as cheaply as possible. All we have to do is look at Groupon, Their IPO is speculated to be, billions and billions of dollars, and it's a little sad in some ways that, I forget who said it recently, but it's something I've certainly felt that, the greatest minds of our generation are, trying to get you to buy, more cheap stuff.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it plays a huge part. But, part of it is, knowing we live in that world, it's how to take advantage of it, and so for us at O'Reilly, it's been hugely important that we create and maintain a direct channel. It's important because, one, we're a global company, and the only way that we can get products, to a global audience is through our own website. Also, it's the only way that we can move our company and our industry forward. So when we first started selling ebooks, Amazon was still, trying to figure out what to do with PDFs, and it wasn't a major part of their business. We felt early on that it was, and, so the only way that we were able to do that is because, we had the platform and entice people through, deals to try this stuff out, the early adopters.
But it's interesting that you brought up Walmart, by the way, because their tagline is everyday low prices. Whereas when I think about deep discounting, I think more about individual products, kind of like the Kindle Daily Deal, or even our own ebook deal of the day. And so when people shop at Walmart, they typically go in feeling confident that they're not likely to find a better price somewhere else. I know there are exceptions. But what I'm, I guess, most bothered by, I think, in our industry right now is these one-offs. So like, today's deal is such and such. And I feel like as a consumer, sometimes it's great when I go up to Amazon in the morning and I see that their Kindle deal of the day is like 99 cents, and it's typically a $10 product that I can just grab without even thinking about it, okay? But, the one thing I wonder about is what's the long-term effect of that? Not only what kind of a seed does that plant in the customer's head to just wait for everything to be dirt cheap, and also, what's the lasting effect of that sale? And it seems to me, as just an industry participant and somebody who's looking at Amazon's website every day, that today's daily deal does exceptionally well, but it disappears from their top 50 or top 100 within a couple of days, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's true with us too, to some extent. But we use our deal of the day in many ways. One, our customers or visitors, they have any number of reasons, not to come to our website, on a monthly basis or a weekly basis or especially a daily basis. And so, the deal of the day is a way to send out, a signal, every day that, hey, there's something of interest here. We also do that through our news and webcasts and other content that we do. But the deal of the day is one of the things that we do that, it sends out, it's almost like a little spark, a shockwave, and when we send that out, we see a lot of retweeting, a lot of goodwill that it builds up. We use it as a way to get the word out about books. So, we do, for example, our deal of the day has a much larger measurable impact than sending out a press release. Send out a press release these days, it goes into the void. You send out a new book announcement and it may or may not hit. But a deal of the day is a way to kind of supercharge the book for a period of time and get it out there, get people retweeting it, talking about it, getting excited about it, and then, it's over. Sometimes certainly, like Amazon, it falls off pretty quickly. But other times it's a way to give it a shot in the arm, and then if the author especially, or if it's a hot topic, that can go on for some time. But as we know too, books have, they all have a time frame and a shelf life, and that arc, that we like to see. We know it's getting harder and harder to keep that, going and sustained.
Yeah, the other thing though that kind of bothers me a bit about deep discounts like this is the difference between brick and mortar purchasing versus online purchasing, and I just have this own gut feeling, I guess, and it's a bias that I'm more inclined as a consumer to do more impulse buying in person at a brick and mortar as opposed to online. And so if there's a deep discount deal at a brick and mortar that lures me in, I'm probably going to walk out of that store with other items as well. Do we see that happening much on our own side? And have you heard that happening much as far as ebooks are concerned in general?
Yeah, we do. We do, but it depends on whether the book we're offering has a vertical. And by that, I mean, is it something like, the book that we released last year, Cooking for Geeks, right? It did really well in almost any of the promos we did. But there wasn't a vertical. There wasn't another Cooking for Geeks or another thing that somebody would logically buy as a set there. It works much better when it's, for example, a JavaScript book. So in our Deal of the Day email that goes out, there's, that JavaScript book that is the Deal of the Day, but then there's the other JavaScript products that we have. And we do see pickup there. But that, too, depends on, are they older products that, the audience may have already purchased, or they're, too out of date, or so it's kind of a complex, filtering process that we have to apply to that. But, it can have an impact. The other thing is that, our deals is, as Joe, they're not 99 cents. They're quite a bit more of that. So, we're still, it's still profitable. But it's also that we're a lot of it is customer acquisition. So, a lot of people have bought from, even though they're loyal O'Reilly customers, they've bought from somewhere else over time. So this is a way that we're acquiring customers. And if we know that you bought a JavaScript book and we have 3 more that we feel that, would be appropriate for you, we can make sure you know about those. We can let you know about a conference that we've got coming up. We can let you know about other products and services that we have. Like, maybe you have a big O'Reilly print book shelf, and we have an upgrade program where you can, upgrade all of your print books to ebooks for $4.99. So it's things like that we're trying to make it so it's not just the one-off, but it's really the beginning of a relationship with somebody. Your point about what are we teaching customers, I think is a really good one, and I don't have, an answer for that. But I do know that the trend has been downward prices. And, Amazon is, still by and large, cheaper than, O'Reilly. You can get our books through the iTunes store for cheaper than what you can get them at O'Reilly and Amazon. So, you can always get them somewhere cheaper, often. But, we're trying to create a platform that it's much more than just that one product. It doesn't work for everybody, and we're trying to refine that and improve that all the time. So it's still, in many ways aspirational for us, but it is, something that we're consciously working towards.
So let's talk about the other end of the spectrum. You have countries like Germany where they have fixed price laws, and you can't do any kind of discounting like this. And of course, you've done a terrific job of leading the team here to build a global presence for us on O'Reilly.com. And I know we sell quite a bit of ebooks all over the globe, and in places that we probably wouldn't have reached in print, or certainly not very easily.
Yeah.
So what do you think about fixed price territories like Germany, and how do you compete there then?
Oh yeah, our friends, the Germans, the ones who they did it right, through this economic crisis that the world is in. So I think that Germany and other, like some of the Scandinavian countries, there's a lot of reasons to really study what they have done. And the German one, I know that there are there's plenty to point out, or that people will point out about the good and bad. But the one thing I really love about the German model is that the way that I would say, and I don't know if Germans would say this, but to me, looking from the outside, is they have signaled that publishing is important. Publishers are important. And, the value of books is such that, they don't want it to just go down to the lowest possible cost. And, we all know publishing companies that are scaling back, not being as innovative, not being as adventurous in what they're publishing, not publishing on important topics, period. That this is throughout the media, newspapers too. And so, it seems to me the Germans have really done something right. So publishing companies can still make enough money, to do the important things that publishing companies do. I think what they have to be careful of is they're not creating an industry that can't change or won't change because it's trussed up, like the way, we do it here, with agricultural subsidies. Everybody's going to grow corn because corn is subsidized and they're not going to grow anything else. Or soybeans, and we're not getting, a rich, agricultural variety and offering. So there's things that they have to be careful of, but I love the fact that they, put a stake in the ground and said that publishing is important. We're not going to let it go down to the lowest common denominator. And I think that there's something really valuable to take note there. And then, of course, there's other things that are, of value to promote. It's like if it's O'Reilly and we had a German website, which we do, we don't work with them that directly, but it would be the services that you create around it. It's, for us, it would be access to the authors. It's, access to, additional services and feachers that we could build into the products that we have. And, for German publishers, I'm not an expert in that by any means, but it would be interesting to know how they're adapting to that.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about this before, and I think we both agree that instead of a lot of these sort of one-off deep discount deals, a better approach with more, I think, long-standing results is probably tied to something in the membership space, right? And when you think membership, the first one that comes to mind for me is Amazon's Prime program, and they continue to evolve that. It's kind of fascinating to watch as, it started out, of course, being very physical product-oriented, and now you have streaming movies, and now you also have a book lending program that's part of it as well. What do you think makes the most importance in a successful membership program?
Yeah, I've studied membership, and I break it, the types of membership down to four things. One is, membership that is based on security and peace of mind. So, AAA, the American Automobile Association, is one. People become members so that if they break down on the side of the road or they, their battery goes dead, they don't have to pay to get assistance from, an authorized, person who will come and help them. Others are like convenience and savings, like, Amazon Prime, or, another one is Costco. You pay to be a member of Costco so you can go in there and buy lots of stuff for free. There's others that are based on values and affinity, the Audubon and Greenpeace and those types of organizations that, you become a member because it's, you value the work that they do and you're a part of that. I think that what Amazon has done, like a lot of what they've done is really brilliant. So if you pay some fee, then you can get your stuff faster and ostensibly cheaper. The streaming video is brilliant. The way that they're building in a full media package is, both really smart and is going to become increasingly difficult to, compete against. As you can get your movies, your books, your music, and, your lawn clippers and, everything else through it, it's, like I say, it's a formidable offering.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, in fact, I shared with you the other day, I was talking with one of our authors who is a huge Prime supporter because he goes through his house and when they run out of toothpaste or mouthwash or whatever, he just scans it and, it shows up a few days later. And obviously that's Amazon's dream right there. They want to turn themselves into the giant shopping cart for everything you can imagine, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that in their lab that they're thinking of ways that, through the Kindle app, you can just scan the items in your house and, add them, queue them up to your order, and designate, when you want to receive those things.
Yeah.
So
discoverability, let's talk about that for a moment because that's another sore spot for me. And everybody I interview, I think, for these TOC podcasts, I wind up coming to that just to get their thoughts on it. The more products that are out there, the more platforms there are to work with, the harder and I guess the bigger a problem discoverability becomes. And, I get frustrated even just on my iPad with all the apps that come out trying to really separate the wheat from the chaff and know which ones are worth going after. I feel like it's only going to get worse before it gets better. What do you think needs to happen to solve the discoverability problem?
Yeah, it's a huge issue, and one that Google is working on mightily, and, everybody's trying to, find a way forward with that. And I can talk a little bit about, what we're doing, here at O'Reilly. The example that I've used for colleagues is, if you search HTML on O'Reilly.com, you're going to get a plethora of stuff, and, from our conferences, from articles, from the books we publish, from the books that we carry from our partner publishers, so that it's not just O'Reilly books. And, they're all competing for your attention. Our HTML books, as well as from our partner publishers, and just the O'Reilly books, of which we have several, they're all saying, I'm for you. And, so we have to create, paths for people, is the way that I term it. And, recently we put together what we call a path to mastery for JavaScript. And, working with Simon St. Laurent, our editor in that space, we created, we laid out those products and put them, laid them out in terms of, beginning, introductory, and advanced, and then laid them out in the way that you'd go through them. And that's still pretty blunt force, but it's helpful. Some other things that we're working on, one of our fellow colleagues, Sarah Kim, is working on an interface for people who are interested in becoming data scientists. So data scientists, we know, is one of the hot new jobs. People who are new to that are trying to understand, how they become one too. And so we're laying out an interface of, how you get to be, how you become a data scientist. And the good thing there is it includes our books, but much more. It includes books from other publishers, websites, articles that you may want to read, classes you may want to take. And so we're trying to take it from a real audience point of view and, laying it out, on our website, but it's not just our stuff. It reminds me in many ways of the bibliographies we used to do and still do. But the first one we ever did was done by Tim O'Reilly, and it was a Unix bibliography. And it was, as O'Reilly was becoming a publishing company, and there were just a lot of people who were trying to understand the Unix space and the products that were in it. So Tim wrote this brilliant thing. At the time it was only in print because it was pre-web. But it just laid out, if you wanted to learn about, Unix and the aspects of Unix, we laid it out for you, and why each product was important and how they fit in to the scheme of things. So I think that we've got to do a better job that way. So it's not just, the toothpaste aisle and who pays for placement, but it's really helping curate the space and understanding where people are coming from and what they want to achieve. So it's really taking a customer focused view and laying out that path for them.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you were talking, there was an analogy that came to mind, which I'll share with you in a second. But it's we have gotten in the habit, I think, over the years of just thinking about the book and the individual books as just part of an offering from the publisher. And yeah, there have been roadmaps and so forth that have been built about how this book connects to that one. But thinking about now a university degree, for example, you don't go to a college, for example, to take a class. You go there for an end-to-end solution of a series of classes that come together and result in you being knowledgeable enough to be successful in a job, right? And so, and more importantly, if we think of a book as the equivalent to a class in that case, it's not just about books. There's so many other things that round that education out. And we've talked a little bit about videos and other publishers' products for that matter. So I think you're right that that's a big part of the future here, is coming up with kind of that end-to-end solution for our products, right?
Yeah, and it's another part of what we're trying to do at O'Reilly. We're doing, as you know so well, Joe, we're trying not to think of it as, just a book. Maybe the thing we do with somebody that used to be a book, maybe it will never be a book. Maybe it will be a series of tutorials at one of our conferences, a video, a workbook, it certainly can be a book, but we're just trying to think of all the ways that we can present, a body of information. And then too, your university analogy is a really good one because it's not just, one product or one product offering. It's really trying to think about the vertical. Again, if somebody wants to become, really, a really good web developer, it's not just, one course or book in HTML, but it's a whole offering, in design and CSS and JavaScript. And then as new technologies become available, jQuery and Node.js and, database technologies and, new, HTML5, hopefully they'll keep us in mind because we're always, coming up with the next thing that is going to keep them on the top of their game. And on top of that, we'll throw in the booze and drugs too.
I knew it would come to that at some point. Hey, so last question for you. Every time I talk with you, I come away thinking about things a little differently. And just to be honest with everybody that's listening in on this, we don't always see eye to eye, but you caused me to consider a perspective maybe that I hadn't thought of before, and sometimes you're even able to persuade me to change my mind. So good for you on that. But the other thing that I find from you a lot of times is you've turned me on to a lot of bloggers and other people out there, not even in just the book publishing industry, but out there, online that I hadn't discovered before. And so I was just wondering, are there 2 or 3 maybe that you might want to recommend to the TOC audience that they start following as well?
Yeah, well, two that come to mind, and ones that we've talked about. One is Pete Myers, who created Birdseye, which is an app. And the reason I got so excited about Pete a couple of years ago, I actually met him at our Sci-Fu event. And so it was an event for scientists that O'Reilly does with Google and Nature magazine. And so Pete he's a scientist. He works in, replacements for plastics and does a lot of work in, educating people, including, our government in why plastics are so damaging and all the endocrine, issues and impairments that are caused by it. But he's also an avid birder, and so he wanted to create something that really kind of scratched his own itch. And the fascinating thing about Pete is that he created something. He didn't even think of creating a book, but he created something that is better than any birding book I've ever experienced. And so it's kind of this leapfrogging technology that is, a publisher would have never come up with, or at least not at that time. It's been about 2 years when he first came up with Birdseye. But what Birdseye did is it on your phone, you could have this identification system that allowed you to, find birds in your area and identify them in a way that, is just difficult in a book. I've got birding books, and it's really hard when you're thumbing through that thing to find the bird and exactly identify it. But he's got all kinds of interesting ideas about, holding the iPhone up so you can hear the birds call and it will immediately bring the thing up. And then he's built in all kinds of social features. So if you're in, Mountain View at Google, which we were at, he brought up his app and he was able to show me all the birds that were spotted by people in the last hour, day, week, month, exactly where they were. And if I tapped on them, it would show me the picture of that the person took. It would give me driving directions to it because it's connected with Google Maps. And so it's just things like this that, again, at that time especially, no publisher would have thought of coming up with because they wouldn't have known what to do with it, and two, publishers think of books, something that is, really linear. Even though that we're so advanced, O'Reilly is really kind of out there, beyond many publishers. It's hard for us sometimes to get beyond, the quote-unquote book mindset. So people like Pete, I think, are really, really worth studying and getting to know and talking to because, they're the kinds of people that are unintentionally disrupting the publishing industry. So it's like Google Maps, I don't think that they set out to, destroy, map makers. But in effect, they have. And Pete Myers, I'm not sure how Bird's Eye is doing. And, birding books are, probably still doing fine. But it's those kinds of things that are coming in from the cold that are highly disruptive and not necessarily intentionally. It's not necessarily somebody who's saying, I want to bring down that industry and take it over. Another who you've gotten to know is Bob Lefsetz, who you interviewed, and just a fascinating person. That he's from the music industry, and I got on his mailing list several years ago, and he's a just raw. Bob is raw, but and often brilliant in his rawness. And, the things that he brings up in the publishing industry really apply to, the music publishing industry really apply to the book publishing industry. And then oftentimes he talks about, the book publishing industry. So, for example, when he first experienced a Kindle and the way that he talked about it. So people like that, and I've got, a list of others, but those are two really good examples, I think. And Bob Lefsetz, for those of you who don't know him, just look him up. His last name is spelled Lefsetz, and get on his mailing list, and it's really worth it. So as many things like that, I just try to look outside publishing because, the way forward is some of it is going to come from within, but a lot of it is going to come from without. And a lot of it is, just our, should be our own study of other industries.
Definitely. Alan, you're going to be at TOC New York in February, right?
No, you're damn straight. So when I arrange my social calendar around TOC New York, Joe.
That's right. So you're going to kill me for this, but I want to recommend to everybody who's listening in that they seek you out in New York because, and not to overwhelm you, but just because, again, I always enjoy my conversations with you. And, we could go on with probably another dozen questions here, so we're going to bring you back at some point in the not-too-distant future. But there's another reason, I think, for people to sign up and go to TOC New York. So Alan Noren, the head of our online and marketing groups at O'Reilly, thanks so much for being part of this podcast.
Yeah, and free drinks at the bar, and we'll charge them to Joe's room, everybody, in New York.